Hello again, AP students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and we are talking about Chapter 6, Learning and Operant Conditioning. And today we're going to focus in on reinforcement and schedules of reinforcement and reinforcers. So as we go along, make sure that you have your handout and fill in the information that you need. So we're going to start with contingencies of reinforcement. Report cards. You know, this is one way that we can reinforce certain behaviors as teachers. But at the college or university level, students are reinforced for studying with report cards that only come out perhaps maybe only twice or 3 times a year. In an operant learning situation, the timing and the frequency of the rewards becomes very crucial. And hence, we've got to get into talking about reinforcement contingencies. This is the relationship between a response and the changes in the stimulation that follow the response. Okay, this deals with many different ways of associating responses and reinforcers. So, continuous versus intermittent reinforcement. Anytime we talk about continuous reinforcement, this is a type of reinforcement schedule that reinforces every single correct response. So if we're trying to teach a new skill, and a lot of times parents will use this when they are perhaps maybe trying to train their toddler when it comes to potty training. But every time that an individual does the correct behavior, that individual gets some type of reinforcer, and that could be for a child, maybe that's potty training, perhaps a little candy treat or something like that. It's a useful tactic that is used early in the learning process. It gives feedback on how well each response is performed, and it is useful for shaping complex new behaviors. Shaping, just so we understand what the terminology is an operant learning technique in which new behavior is produced by reinforcing responses that are similar to the desired response. Teachers might use shaping and continually raise the bar to increase the standard required for earning a reward, which tells the learner that their performance has been improved. So, as a parent, if I'm trying to potty train my child, as we are just initially starting this process, every time that they might go to the restroom, they might get a goldfish cracker. Okay? As they are able to start doing that a little bit more on their own, I might not necessarily reward with a goldfish every single time. Okay, but I am using that initially to get them to be motivated. Okay, there are some drawbacks, and it's possible that you can accidentally fail to reward a correct response. So maybe somebody does the correct behavior, but you're not quick with the reward on your end, and that might be misinterpreted that the response was not correct. And hence that might not necessarily help get the behavior to be repeated. Continuous reinforcement typically loses its reinforcing quality as the organism becomes a little bit full. So we need to look for different ways of perhaps maybe shaping that behavior. Okay? There is intermittent reinforcement. This is a type of reinforcement schedule by which some but not all of the correct responses are reinforced. This is sometimes also called as partial reinforcement. You reward some but not all of the responses, and you have a less frequent schedule of reward, perhaps maybe every third correct response can serve as an incentive. The advantage is that it's a little more resistant to extinction. So when we talk about potty training, we might have shaped that behavior, and then we might move to a partial reinforcement schedule where every so often when that correct behavior is done, the treat will be handed out with the hopes that maybe that will keep the subject a little more motivated to do the right thing. Extinction, just like as in classical conditioning, is a focus here when we talk about conditioning of behavior, but in operant conditioning, extinction is the process by which a response has been learned, is weakened by the absence or removal of the reinforcement. and this occurs when reinforcement is withheld. So for example, gambling might be an example of this. If the slot machine had been paying off and it stops, one would notice the difference compared to a gambler whose slot machine never paid off. One may keep playing, and hence the unrewarded gambler may play longer than those that had been rewarded more often. Schedules of reinforcement. These are programs specifying the frequency and timing of reinforcement, and there are some different schedules. There are ratio schedules. This is a program by which the reinforcement depends on the number of correct responses, so we might reward only on every 5th response. There are fixed ratios. These are programs by which the reinforcement is contingent on certain unvarying numbers of responses. A lot of times when we talk about getting your paycheck, it might come after every 2 weeks or once a month. And that fixed schedule would tell you exactly when that's going to occur. Or certain jobs where a person is paid by the number of items that they make or piecework. So after every 20th item, you get paid. Variable ratio schedules are reinforcement programs by which the number of responses required for the reinforcement varies from trial to trial. And a great example of that would be in the world of telemarketing, that you might get paid after a certain number or a certain variable number of attempts of trying to sell a certain product. Interval schedules. This is a program in which the reinforcement depends on the time interval elapsed since the last reinforcement. Time is of the essence, and reinforcement for the most part is based on the responses made within that certain period of time instead of the number of responses given. So a fixed interval, these are common in the work world. They may appear as a monthly paycheck or contingent on a certain fixed time period. Variable intervals, this could be the program by which the time period between the reinforcement varies from time to time. It's very unpredictable, and a great example of this is if you ever have gone fishing. Every time you cast out, you're not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to catch something, but the idea is that some people can stay very motivated to continue casting out even if they know that their cast probably isn't going to be productive as far as catching a fish. Primary and secondary reinforcers. Okay, a primary reinforcer could be anything that would be on the line of food, sex. It could possibly be something that has an innate basis because of their biological value or the value to the organism. Conditioned reinforcers, or AKA secondary reinforcers, these are things that sometimes get nicknamed as tokens. These are things like money that can basically acquire reinforcing power by a learned association with the primary reinforcers, some kind of neutral stimuli or any kind of stimuli that can become one. So if you're in an elementary classroom, that could be a sticker by all means. Okay. Token economies are based on these secondary reinforcers, and a lot of times they are a therapeutic method based on operant conditioning by which individuals are rewarded with tokens that act as secondary reinforcers, and these tokens can be redeemed for a variety of rewards and privileges. So sometimes you might see this where an individual might be perhaps incarcerated. If they have been well behaved, they might get certain tokens that might be used at perhaps maybe a concession stand or some type of snack bar where an individual can go and trade those things out. Preferred activities as reinforcers, or AKA the PREMAC principle. The opportunity to perform a desirable activity can be used as a reinforcer just as effectively as any kind of food or drink or other type of primary reinforcers. And hence, the principle at work here says that the preferred activity can be used to reinforce one that is less preferred. Hence, the PREMAC principle. And this was named for a man named David Premack back in 1965 who first demonstrated this on thirsty rats, which increased their running in an exercise wheel when they learned that the running would be followed by an opportunity to drink. Okay, so if you've ever had to study and you're like, man, I'd rather be on my phone, you might use this Premack principle in such a way where you tell yourself, if I study for 30 minutes, I'll give myself 5 minutes to check my email or text. And then the whole idea is that you're going to be reinforced to keep studying, knowing that you're going to have an opportunity to do something that you really want to do shortly after. Thank you very much.